Today we're going to talk about pedigrees. What is a pedigree? Pedigree is a diagram that shows family relationships, normally extended family, most often used to show inheritance of genetic diseases through dominance and recessiveness.
Some symbols used in pedigrees could include a box that represents a male, a circle that represents a female, a filled-in box represents an affected male, a filled-in circle represents an affected female, and a line connecting a male and female represents the marriage line.
There are 5 types of pedigrees: autosomal recessive, autosomal dominant, X-linked recessive, X-linked dominant, and very rarely Y-linked. The first one we're going to start off with is autosomal recessive. Autosomal recessive diseases can skip generations, they can be heterozygous, and they affect males and females equally. Now here's our example. In our example, both the mother and father are heterozygous for sickle cell anemia. Now, they have a daughter, and both the recessive traits are passed down to the daughter, so she has sickle cell anemia. She then marries a husband who is homozygous dominant to not have the disease, which equals them both having heterozygous children. Now their son, he gets the dominant trait from one of the mother or father's traits, and then gets the recessive trait from the mother or father, and then also marries a heterozygous female. Now, one of their sons, their firstborn son, gets both the recessive traits, so he has sickle cell anemia, but their other son only gets one of each of the traits, so he is a carrier. Secondly, we're going to talk about autosomal dominant. Autosomal dominant hits every generation and affects males and females equally. Now, we used Huntington's disease as our example. So here you have the father who is homozygous recessive, and the mother is homozygous dominant. She passes her dominant allele down to her firstborn son, while the father passes the recessive allele down to the son as well, making him heterozygous for the disease. He then marries a woman that is homozygous recessive for the disease, and their firstborn daughter gets the dominant disease from the father and the recessive allele from the mother, making her heterozygous for the disease. Now, the second daughter clearly gets the recessive allele from the mother, but also gets the recessive allele from the father in a 50-50 shot. Now, the second-born son from the P generation is also heterozygous due to the recessive allele from the father and the dominant allele from the mother, and has no further offspring. Now, lastly, the daughter from the P generation is also heterozygous, then marries another heterozygous male. Now, the positive alleles the dominant alleles from both the mother and father are given to their firstborn son, giving him the disease, and then both the recessive alleles from the mother and the father are given to the daughter, making her recessive and not having the disease.
Thirdly, we're doing X-linked recessive. This affects males mostly, and with an affected father, it cannot be passed down to his son, and all the daughters will be carriers. For females to get the disease, the mother either has to be a carrier or has to have the disease, and the father has to have the trait, and it also skips generations.
Now, for our example, we're using color blindness. So here we have a heterozygous female and then a male with the trait. Now, the female's recessive trait is passed down to their first son, who marries a heterozygous female. Now, their firstborn son gets the recessive trait from his mother, which causes him to have the disease. And now their daughter gets the recessive trait from her mother and her father, to give her the disease. Back to the F1 generation. Their second-born son has a dominant allele, which comes from his mom, and marries a woman that is heterozygous. Their daughter is also heterozygous, getting the dominant trait from her father and the recessive trait from her mother. Now the son, he has the disease because he got the recessive trait from his mother. Fourthly, we're going to talk about X-linked dominant traits. Now, if a father has the disease, the daughter is bound to have it, and the son can only get the disease from his mother. These diseases do not skip generations. For our example, we used rickets. Now here is a male with the disease who marries a female who is homozygous for not having the disease. Now they have a daughter who gets the dominant allele from her father and the recessive allele from her mother, making her heterozygous, still having the disease. Now she marries a husband who does not have the disease. Now their son has the disease due to the 50-50 chance of getting the dominant allele from his mother. Now, the original daughter's brother does not have the disease due to the mom's recessiveness of the disease. Now he marries a recessive woman and they have a recessive daughter. Now, here the disease has completely left the family. Finally, we're going to talk about Y-linked traits. Now, Y-linked traits are very rare and can only be passed from father to son, and females cannot get these diseases or traits. Now, the trait we used is hairy ears. Yeah, gross. I know, right? So here we have a male that has this trait, and he marries a female who obviously cannot have this trait. Now they have a daughter who does not have the trait, and she marries a husband who does not carry the trait. Therefore, their son can't have the disease. Now their son has to get the disease from his father, and he marries a woman that will not have the disease. Now because he has the disease, both his sons are guaranteed to have the disease. Hairy ears are awesome.